Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of The Seven Deadly Sins Season 4 on Netflix. And I really didn't like this season, mainly because of how it's structured and how the plot just kind of starts to get away from itself. Because I'm going into this, oh boy, we're going to see Meliodas get back up, figure out what's going on, and we're going to take the fight to the Ten Commandments. Kind of doesn't really happen that way. We just. Granted, there is movement on its front, but we start the first half at least doing flashbacks to deliver information. And I'm just like, okay. This is kind of weird, but alright. I'm like, alright, granted, it's important information. It's the execution of it that's just like, this is kind of stupid. And just really kind of takes it out of you because you end on the last season of like, okay, Meliodas got really screwed up. So what are we gonna do to kind of go after the Ten Commandments? And just shit goes kind of crazy, and it kind of almost gets wrapped up to a degree because of just some plot hoo-ha to do shit going on that just goes completely crazy. So the first portion, we see most of the sins are gathered at the capital, not at Camelot, Leonis, and dealing with the aftermath of the demons coming to fight him and everything. And for some reason, the king's like, "Hey, how about we make Hauser the interim grandmaster dude?" Even though we've got like Hendrix and like Dreyfus, and it's like, no, we'll do this dude. Okay, cool. So while they're just figuring out what to do, Meliodas is dealing with the fact of like, I can get stronger if I pretty much go complete under demon dick, and he doesn't want to lose himself. I'm like, all right, cool. We kind of dealt with that. That's kind of fine. Where it goes completely nutty for me is we have King and Deanne are in the Fairy King's forest, and they're like mourning the death of Meliodas, and then for whatever reason, Droll and Gloxinia pop up and be like, "Hey, tell me death." And then they're like, we want to see if you could be strong enough to deal with stuff. And they literally send him back in time in their own, like, not in Deanne and King's bodies, but in Droll and Gloxinia's bodies. And they go back like 3,000 years. And evidently they were friends with Meliodas and Elizabeth. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And we just see there's important information here, but you get to a fact of like, just like, all right, tell me what's important. But they're like, oh, you've got to like go through this, and if you make the wrong decision, you're gonna be there. Well, you don't learn that until King gets out of it, but you see that they're going around. Of course, they're like, oh, Deanne's acting like Deanne, but doesn't. Nobody comments on completely on how off it feels. Like Meliodas and Elizabeth would have figured that out, and they're like, what? These guys are kind of off. But they go, they help some humans that were pretty much getting screwed over by the demons, murdered and all that. Take them to the forces of the like giants, fairies, and the goddess race. Like, oh, look at this. They've got this archway to the goddess realm, and we've got 3 of the 4 archangels, Lodosiel, and then like the other 2. It just they become important as they get like macked on like more important in the last half of the season. It's completely nuts. But they're just doing their thing, being like, hey, let's kind of use this and draw on the demons. And they draw on like the Ten Commandments and they like murder all these demons. Like, yes, we're pretty much evil too. I don't mind this fact, but it's just getting so overplayed of like, oh, they're all dicks too. Oh, they're dicks as well. I understand figuring out both sides, but like, the demons are eating people. The Scottish race is like murdering people too, and it's just like fuck. Because we see that for some reason, Derriere, yes, one of the Ten Commandments, her sister was in there and goes completely nutters, and like Elizabeth was trying to calm everybody down, like hold on, and then of course her archangel buddies are like, by the way, we don't truly understand what Elizabeth's pecking order is in the goddess realm, but evidently the 4 archangels are comparable in power to the Ten Commandments. But they nuke those guys. and pretty much take out a good chunk of it, except for the Ten Commandments. As they start fighting them off, we see that the humans are thrown in with the demons and start, for some odd reason, being able to take down fairies and giants like bosses. Like, it's never really explained why they had the power to fucking like go hambo tambo on them, and also killing goddess race people. Like, okay, I understand that they're not on the same level as the archangels, but why the fuck are they able to do this shit? Oh, plot reasons. Also, Gloxinia's sister is involved in there, and she's still alive in the present, but completely mucked up because she gets her eye sliced out, her legs fucked up. Before this other human's like, yeah, don't do that, and he's like a rip-off Bond. It's like, all right, whatever. But we see them mucking around and drolling Gloxinia's bodies. We see that they run into Gother, but Gother is a doll, and that the real Gother is one of the Ten Commandments as a demon. And it's like, oh, okay. And we find out that the Gother doll and one of the other Ten Commandments pretty much corrupts the goddess portal and uses it to go to the demon realm, but it's the prison one, and lets out the real Gother, who doesn't like either side. Like, fuck all you assholes for doing this shit and put me in a goddamn prison. And it's like, okay. He's pretty chill. I was like, alright, that's kind of an interesting character, but you're like, well, I'm gonna end this thing. It's like, oh, okay. You wanna tell us how we're gonna do that? Nope. Okay. And he's like, hey, go there, be yourself and do all that stuff and be a you dude, yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. Alright. Now, granted, I'm usually interested in these kind of character developments and everything, but I'm like, when you introduce time travel and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I thought we were gonna be going on for that story, and it's like, oh, okay. So, we get to a point where Gloxinia, controlled by King, finds out what's going on with his sister and stops himself from killing the human dude. But of course, the real Gloxinia killed the dude, went Ten Commandment. Of course, Zeldris is screwing and mucking around with Deanne, and evidently, Droll's like, yeah, she's got two choices: either die or become a Ten Commandment. And she pops back up in the present, like, yeah, I just ran away because fuck that shit. It's like, I didn't know that was an option. Yeah, okay. But we had seen that, like, two of the Ten Commandments had sacrificed their hearts to go in the Endura form, and it's like they're demon fucking going crazy. But Elizabeth was able to use her powers to calm them down and push out the darkness, and like, hey, that's kind of weird. Alright, fine. We then shift over that Deanne and King were then put back into Leonis, and the Ten Commandments are... Not Ten Commandments. Fuck. Seven Deadly Sins are reunited, and of course King Bartos like, yeah, this. And of course he did a prophecy and everything. And it came true. He's like, yeah, let's kind of get this all together. And then of course Gother's being like kind of cagey and like, screw this noise. And then we get his backstory that evidently real Gother did his shit, and he wakes up in a cavern and falls in love with Nadja, King Barter's sister. And she was always kind of sickly, and they have their own little thing and doing their stuff. He Gother doll dresses up however he fucking wants, and alright, cool. And he, the real Gother, god damn it, this is getting fucking annoying. Is like, hey, here's a gift for you, and it's like a heart. But the thing is, we find out later on that he's had his heart all along. He would just keep like mind wiping himself to like stop it, and this was more just kind of like a thing that he could give his son, even though he couldn't really give him much else. And that's pretty much it. They pretty much forced Gother to contend with the fact that he's got a heart, and to experience those things and to keep going with life. Okay, cool. Then they're like trying to figure out, all right, what are we gonna do now? We gotta go fight the Ten Commandments. We gotta go get Arthur. The Ten Commandments seats in Camelot. Let's kind of go do that shit. Evidently, they like build a new boar's hat. Let's see. Merlin tried to look into Camelot with something, and Zeldris kind of like screwed her over with like his commandment and all that. And Elizabeth pretty much went and used some of her power to kind of like mess up Zeldris, but he unlocked all of her memories. And then we kind of get into another kind of backstory thing as we see that Bond is like, hey, I couldn't take having Elaine die on me again, and Meliodas is like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna lay it on me. I've buried this chick like 106 times. This is the 107th." So evidently, Meliodas and Elizabeth's love was forbidden. Shocker, goddess and devil thing. Well, Demon King's like, no, Supreme Being, which is Elizabeth's mother, supreme deity of the goddess race, is like, no, and curse them, Meliodas to pretty much be immortal. Elizabeth, every time she pretty much like reawakens her power, to pretty much die in 3 days and keep resurrecting over and over again. And I'm just like, alright, so now we've got an arbitrary 3-day time, which, by the way, is not done by the end of this fucking thing. And it's just like, alright. So, ugh. Now Bond's like, I feel like a dick. But that doesn't really get messed with until like later on. And they're like, yeah, we gotta kind of figure out what to do with this. So they're pretty much going to try and figure out what the plan is. They get to this Colin place to try and like remove the barrier around Camelot, but it was actually Melascula, the one of the 10 Commandments, being like, hey, screw that. Pretty much imprisons Meliodas in a dark barrier thing, and then unleashes these spirits that were killed by King's friend, and they of course possess Deanne. Had that kind of weird little spat going on. They're able to push the beings out. I'm like, all right, fine, because well, of course King's friend, Halbram, was of course possessing the helmet. It's like, hey, why don't you just fucking nuke my ass? And that worked for most of the spirits, but then there was one, and Elizabeth was able to kibosh that thing with her light power. It's like, alright, this is just kind of weird, because we get action scenes that they're calling out all these kind of attack moves. Granted, I love shonens and love those kind of action fighting animes where they do those moves, but sometimes they just come out of nowhere, or they keep repeating the same ones, and they just don't do much with it. I understand budget constraints and everything, but like, it was just kind of boring and doesn't really pull you into the action. Like, alright, same kind of thing. Okay. So they get Deanne kind of fixed up, and get everybody pretty much fixed up. Elizabeth's pretty much healing shit like ain't nobody's business. And Meliodas then decides, I'm going to get out of this giant darkness hole by pretty much becoming a demon again. And fully awakens himself, and he like pretty much loses his memories and who he is. And he's like, I am the leader of the 10 Commandments. And then they pretty much lock him and Escanor in a box, and Escanor gets like super powered at one point because of the sun, and knocks his ass out. Then of course we're going to like, what's going on here? And we find out that drops the thing. Arthur's been doing some crazy shit, has been trying to get Excalibur. That's pretty much the extent of his story as it gets locked into the rest of it. And they're trying to figure out what to do to save Meliodas. While also 2 weird ass fucking demons come in. Chandler, who's the master of Meliodas, and Cusack, who's the master of Zeldris, just pop up like, hey, because the 10 Commandments are pretty much getting screwed, we're here. Because Zeldris is like collecting them. Esteros is like, alright, we'll kind of get that shit unlocked too. He's still like in a pod, but then he gets out later on. But they're trying to figure out what to do with Meliodas. Merlin reveals that she's at her usual form as a little girl, because that's a trope ass fucking thing. We get some backstory on her, and that she knows Elizabeth, called her big sis and all that shit, and that she is like she's got unlimited potential magic wise, and was like, hey, I'll help out whoever gives me the best gift. And she gets 2 gifts, one from the Demon King, one from the Goddess Race. Says, fuck that shit, I ain't picking either of you. Her mage plays pretty much gets tanked. They were gonna pretty much use her as a pretty much living nuke anyway, so it's like, hey, wash. And she's kind of been doing her own thing. We see those kind of hints in the background, but it's honestly just whatever they want the plot to do, or the plot demands, it pops up, and it's like, I'm just getting really uninterested in this. Well, the Chandler dude pretty much blasts off to pretty much come and save Meliodas. We get some pretty much fights, as they're pretty much woefully underprepared for taking them on. Escanor's pretty fucked up from his fight with Meliodas. Merlin pretty much gets insta-nuked by that dude, Chandler, and King and Deanne kind of get a little bit on him, but not really. They're barely able to kind of like deal with him as they get some help. But of course, Meliodas wakens up and is like, "I'm taking Elizabeth, and I'm gonna become the Demon King because that's gonna be the only way that I'm gonna like destroy this curse." It's like that's actually not that bad of a plan, but it sounds like a bad plan because he will then not be able to manifest in uh, the world of Britannia because of like his powers and all that stuff. So he's gonna like go eat all the Ten Commandment shit and get pretty much the half of the power of his father because that's what he did because he needed to like do that. I became very uninterested in that kind of stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. So he gets there, he talks to Zeldris, is able to convince him. Ezra's like, fine, whatever. But he goes off, finds Derriere and the other dude, Monspeed or something like that. Evidently, Monspeed likes him, likes Derriere. Doesn't really say it until the end when he gets killed trying to save her from Estarossa, but he doesn't really say it. She's like, why did you do that? She gets blasted off. But Meliodas is pretty much like, Elizabeth, this is what I gotta do to save you. She's like, no, I'm gonna save you by, because he disbands the Seven Sins, and then Elizabeth goes, pretty much reforms the Seven Sins to go and try and save Meliodas. We find out that fucking Hawk was being, used as a gateway for the Demon King to spy on them, and that, he's in purgatory, and that's probably where Meliodas' shit is. So Bond's like, let me go save my bro, because Merlin's like, hey, my father went in there and was like aged and fucking died and went fucking nuts. He's like, I'm immortal, I'll fucking do it. He gets like chucked into the pig's eye, literally, and it disappears for a little bit and then comes back at the end, bearded and shit. And we see that Meliodas is good half emotions, whatever, kind of physical manifestation of him not being a cock. Well, according to the story, because I don't think it's unreasonable for Meliodas to be like, hey, Demon King's being kind of a dick shit. Let's kind of fix this shit. Which I'd probably be able to say, hey, that's probably what happened with the Supreme Being and the other Demon King, and be like, whatever. Ooh, that was a stupid end stinger. I was so uninterested after that. But Elizabeth runs away. Arthur's like mucking about and is able to get to Excalibur, but he gets really fucked up because evidently the sword operates almost identically to One for All, where all these like warriors have pretty much killed themselves and it absorbs their blood and their skills, and Arthur's not trained enough for it and gets completely fucked over. But Merlin's able to be like, I'm gonna take you with me, but not before the Cusack dude does a demon magic thing, and then Arthur fucking kills himself. It's like, okay. So evidently that factors in later on. I'm like, what the fuck ever. But Elizabeth goes and is like, hey, let's kind of do this. And evidently the archangels are brought in because her other sister's trying to find Gilthunder and gets tricked by Ladurciel to serve as a vessel. It's like, okay, I kind of saw that the archangels will do this. The other ones get their vessels as well. And they're like, let's reform Stigmata and get the giants and the fairies and the humans together. Alright, let's do this shit. And of course they're being assholes about it. There's not really much with those archangels either. Of course, Ladurciel's the big old cock dude. We find out that the fourth archangel was killed by Estarossa, and that Escanor potentially has his grace, because there's like 4 pretty much elemental graces. And it's like, hey, you're gonna give that to me. He's like, no, I'm not. And then blah blah blah. And then, okay, that came of that, whatever that fucking means. But they figure out that they're gonna pretty much go and storm Camelot and fight the demons that are coming to Leonis and all that. They have one portion defending Leonis, one portion going to actually attack, and then like another force that's going to go in. We see Meliodas gets like at least 5 of the commandments and eats them and goes into a giant egg thing, and that's about it. Estarossa gets Mons Pete's and eats like 3 of those commandments and goes nutty. And evidently he's in love with Elizabeth and wants to be Meliodas. And that he used to be like the most useless of them because he didn't want to kill anything, but he was given a commandment to unleash his inner darkness. But he pretty much just wants to be Meliodas and be with Elizabeth. And we see like some fight scenes and everything. It's like, sweet Jesus. Elizabeth's able to like heal people. Says, I'll go with you and do this. I'm like, fine, whatever. How does this make you any better than Meliodas being like, I'm going to become the Demon King? It's just, it got really boring. I'm just like, alright. I understand that watching and seeing different kinds of anime and reviewing them kind of gets you into some kind of franchise fatigue. But this was just like, the plot's going all over the place. A lot of this stuff has been flashbacks this season. You barely get any kind of movement on the main kind of thing. We got an arbitrary deadline that Elizabeth's got like maybe one day at most, as Esterosa takes her off to one place, and other people are pretty much going after her to try and save her ass. Derriere's on their side at the moment because the dude she's been hanging out with has been killed. And she feels kind of for Elizabeth because she spared them when they went kind of nutso-futso. And it's just like, alright, that is a weird-ass place to end it. And I am uninterested anymore. I'm like, I wouldn't recommend this. It's like, I understand having to strike a balance of doing a plot at a nice speed, so that way it doesn't seem too fast or too slow. But this just seems like it doesn't care. Like, okay, you set us up to be really hyped for the battle with the Ten Commandments, and most of it is just like getting us more info on stuff that is important later. And I get that, but it's just like, alright, what do I do with this? And especially when it's done so uninterestingly. It's just, look at this, and then you got like filler of like all these other things going on in the background. It's like, can you just stick to the pertinent information, please? You got to do a balance of world building, because there could have been an interesting prequel kind of thing dealing with what happened before the end of the last Holy War. But they didn't do that. And I'm just done with it because I'm not interested in the characters anymore. I'm not even really interested in what they do anymore, or action-wise. It really isn't for me anymore. It just, sometimes it happens that way with certain anime, where you get to a certain season, or any kind of TV show, or any kind of medium, where you're like, this just doesn't get me. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You're like, alright, cool. Everybody else is into this. More power to you. If you like it, good. I'm glad you like it. I never want to take that kind of thing away from someone. My thing is just, this is what I feel about the story. This is what I think it could be done better. Definitely should have done better kind of doling out of information instead of just dumping it. Boom, boom, boom. And then like, oh, no, we kind of have a main plot here. We kind of have to get back to it. And then being like, oh, okay, we're back to it. But now this entails that we talk about a little bit more of this. It's like, oh, okay. And then goes in such a weird way that you're over halfway through the season. And you have to get to a weird endpoint for this season. Because because you don't have any more time or episodes to do things. You're like, argh. So I was overall really disappointed in this. There really wasn't as much character development as anything. This was more of like an exposition dump and trying to hurry us along to the end. I'm just not having that, and I wouldn't really recommend this. So those are my opinions on this season. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.